Veniva freschi piuttosto di non dargli piuttosto non li mandi in mercato. Dopo meno pure.
I think the Venetians, they need such realities. And I also need Venice. I mean, it's not a metropole like London or Paris, like where you have the customers living there. Not being a metropole, the living conditions in Venice are much better than they would be in London or Paris. It's much easier to live in Venice, but still I can work with the same clientele. And especially in Venice, I mean, that's the walking city. You don't buy tires for the car, but you buy good shoes because you have to walk. I think the city is made to measure to the humans, for me.
Hi, this is Sarah with another episode of Materially Speaking, where artists and artisans tell their stories through the materials they choose. In the second of our Venice series, Mike Axinn and I are meeting Austrian-born shoemaker Gabriele Gmeiner. As we set off, a trolley rumbles by bearing bread, and then another carrying bottles. A man trudges over with a cart to fetch some crates of vegetables from a passing boat and wheel them back to his restaurant. This is a city on foot. As we make the last tight turn into Gabrielle's courtyard, we find her sitting at a large wooden desk in her shop window, wearing a work apron and smiling. A shoe is jammed between her knees as she files the base of it. In front of her are a wide selection of hammers, tapes, knives and glues. Leather ribbons are stapled on the walls with dozens of wooden-handled tools slotted inside their curves. Suspended above her head is a forest of wooden shoe lasts.
Blah, 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 blah. I didn't...
Goggle!
Can I ask you to tell us your name and what you do?
My name is Gabriele Gmeiner and I am a shoemaker. I was born in Austria, in a small city called Bregenz, which is on the Lake of Constance in the west of Austria, close to the Swiss border.
Was shoemaking something that your family did?
Actually, there was a grand uncle, but I've never met him when he was alive. So when he died, the relatives, they said to my father, "Your doctor, isn't she making shoes? Wouldn't you be interested in having his tools and certain things?" And I went to see, and he was actually years ago a good shoemaker. Then, of course, he ended up in repairing shoes like everybody did in the 70s, 60s, 70s. Nobody wanted to have handmade shoes. I have his working bench here, and I found really interesting old materials, handmade nails, and especially for shoes, nice tools, and it was a nice inheritance.
So how about your childhood and your education? What sort of things were you interested in then?
It was a free childhood in nature. It's countryside there. And I got interested in school and art and making sculptures, which I also did during the school time. And I also was orientated in languages, so that already prepared my way then to move freely in the whole of Europe.
And how did the decision come about to make shoes?
I was very much into arts, and I was doing sculptures in clay and any kind of materials. I was experimenting, and my thoughts were, no one of my family has been an artist and doing arts just for the art's sake. So I decided to make something applied, some applied art, which is a via di mezzo. It's a halfway through, and I built up a whole philosophy about what is the shoe, how does the shoe influence on the human being. So if I create a sculpture for the feet, how does it influence in the movement and the well-being, and what is the shoe today? It's the basement of our modern living. So it was very complex. And actually I said, I want to make portraits of very detailed for the persons, and I will work for. And that was the initial idea.
How old were you when you came up with this philosophy of shoemaking?
That was about when I was 18, something like that. And then I already started looking for a place where to learn the techniques. And I first went to Vienna, to the old master shoemakers, and they were all dusty and rigid, actually, and said, no, it's no trade for ladies. And I said, oh dear. I was desperate. There was a lady doing from London doing costume designer, Nikki Gillibrand, and she said, oh, there is a school in London. You should have a look there. The school specialized in shoemaking. So that's how I started really to get into the craft.
So you came to London when?
When I was 19. So it's 91.
And what was the school?
That was the Cordwainers College, and that was in Hackney at the time. And I got inscribed in this technical shoemaking course. That was a 2 years course. And it was great because I had a really nice all-over view of shoemaking. So, but then as the school was rather specialized in preparing the students for the industrial.
The commercial side.
Industrial production of shoes. I tried to find my way in what I was looking for in the handmaking and the very personal shoemaking. And I found also the companies, the workshops in London making such shoes, of course. I had the chance to work on all the details, like making a shoes. Really, it's composed by different professions. So there is the last maker, there is the pattern maker, there is the clicker. The clicker, a very special term. They're cutting the leather, and then there is the upper sewer. So I could really experiment with it all. And the good thing at school is that you can make errors, you can experiment.
So if there is all these different professions within shoemaking, do you do all of them?
Yeah. It's a quite holistic thingy, but that's part of me because every step makes part of creating, I think. So making the lasts, I'm already thinking of how many layers I have to add, how can I add the layers, so what's coming out at the end. So each step influences on the shape, on the outcome of the shoe. Yeah.
Wow. So what was the step after Cordwainers?
After Cordwainers, I did some work experiences. I went to John Lobb as well. I did some months there. I did some holiday substitutions, and I went to the home workers. So John Lobb, they work with people that have their own workshop, and they would send them the material and the work to do to them, and they would send it back. So they're not all the people working for John Lobb. They're not all sitting at St. James Street. So I went to one of them, and that was in Todmorden up north, near Manchester. And I could realize a shoe with their help, and I did these kind of work experiences.
So we're sitting in Venice. How did you get to be here?
I was traveling about to learn, the 10 years of learning process. So there was London, then I was in Paris as well. There was a school specializing in hand sewing, directly related to Hermes, the saddlery sewing. And in between that, I also realized autonomously private art projects. Just to give you a short description, is like the first one was coming back from Vienna. I went to the place I'm coming from. It was a very countryside place and apparently not very much culture. So I was trying to make a research about still the old crafts in the region and the materials they used, the farmers, to create shoes or anything else. And I used these materials to create 4 pairs of shoes, which were portraits of personalities from literature.
I have a question. How would you describe your aesthetic, your design, your philosophy of design?
It's very, very classic. And I think it varies really from person to person. I'm trying to get also the person's wishes. What they want to have the shoes for. But the aesthetic in itself, I think it's all about proportions. It's all about... now if a customer has a difficult foot, so many of us, we have difficult feet, I want to portray this foot to gain the measurements, but have a really nice aesthetic shoe coming out. And that varies really from foot to foot, and it's all about proportions. So my creativity now, it's not that much anymore about experimenting materials. It's about finding the right proportions in thicknesses, distances, curves, 1 millimeter here or 1 there. I mean, it's such a small object, a shoe, far smaller than a house would be. So 1 millimeter more or less, it changes the aesthetic. So it's all about that. But it's very classic.
Great. I think that takes us on beautifully to the process of making a shoe. So can you tell us what happens from someone expressing an interest in having a pair of your shoes?
Well, I would start with the measurements, of course, and just taking the measurements. And talking about the foot. It takes about 1 hour. So the person would come here, and I take the measurements when the person is seated, and there is just a part of the pressure on the foot, and then standing as well with the whole of the pressure. So that sometimes changes a lot the measurements. Sometimes it does not. So that depends on the consistency of the muscles, the tendons, the foot. And we would talk about sensibilities of the feet, or I would check all the shape of the foot and the arch, and then we would talk about what the customer expects of the outcome. If he wants a very elegant shoe, if he wants an elegant but everyday shoe, or if he wants a rather casual shoe. So I'm trying to get the person to collaborate, to get involved, because it's not a ready-made product. So see it, take it, go away with it. So the more I can get the person to work with me, the more happy I am, really. And once we stabilized all that information, I would start making the last. So here I get back to my origins in making sculptures. I would order a rough cut of the last, which has the basic measurements included, and then I would work on it to get to the measurements of the person.
Can I just ask you to explain what a last is?
The last is a wooden shape, which is the positive representation of the foot, and I would make the negative, I think. Or what is it? I would build the shoe around the last, and then the last is taken out. And it represents the foot, actually, but it's not the foot, it's...
These are lasts, are they?
Yeah, they are hanging above me. Yeah.
And what are they made of?
Of beech wood. It has to be hardwood, because we are beating a lot on it. So to force the leather into its shape, we're also helping with the hammering.
I love that you talked about it as a negative and a positive, almost like photography.
Yeah, it is. It is, really. And the lasts, they stay with me as the negatives stay with the photographer. Sometimes people ask, oh, well, can we take the shoe last with us? I said, no, that's the diritto d'autore. It stays with me as the negative stays with the photo.
Is the intellectual property?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a last. I've come in and I've been measured for a last. What happens next? And can I ask you to explain the materials as we go?
So the next step would be that I make a test pair. It's a proper shoe, really. It's made with second choice materials and sometimes also recycled materials, but it's a working shoe, I say, because the customer has to wear it to find out if everything is as it should be. So that's for new customers. The risk of having errors in the making of the last is about 20%, sometimes more. So doing this gives the guarantee that we get to 100% really nice fit.
When you say second choice materials, can you give us some examples?
Talking about the skin of a box calf. So the whole skin of the box calf, I can gain like 2, sometimes 3 pair of first choice material, which I would cut out on the back of the animal. So going towards the belly and the neck, the fibers of the leather get looser because on the animal there is more movement on the belly and also on the neck, and more fat inclusions among the fibers. So that loosens the structure. For the first choice material, I want to have a really tight structure that doesn't move too much, because I would pull it then on the last and it should not move anymore once it's on there. Because the leather, it doesn't have to give way to the foot, because I have already the last made in the right measurement. So it shouldn't change anymore.
Where do you source your leathers?
The box calf leather I get from France. There is a wholesaler in Milan I contact for. Then the sole leather I actually changed quite recently. I found this very near tannery. It's in the area of Pordenone, Porcia. It's Presot, and it's a traditional company. But there are 3 2 brothers and a young woman conducting the company, and it's a very nice, it's a very sustainable way of looking at this archaic product, really. They were winning prizes about no waste, so they have a whole recycling of the water, making their own energy for the machines. It's a all natural product, and they have like workers from other continents, from Africa, having a proper contract. They have the chance to have their own garden, cultivating vegetables and having chicken for the eggs, and so it's very, very up to date, this company. I think it's very sensitive the way they bring it in these times. And I got this, and it's really good leather, and that's for the soles and for the reinforcements. Then special leathers I get, like the Cordovan leather. There is this company almost in the city of Chicago producing horse leather, and it's a very special way of treatment because they would color it still by hand. It's a crafts process there, and they would work in waxes and oils, and it's a quite beautiful product. It's the luxury of today. As the customers, they do not seek any alligators anymore, or reptiles in general. If they want to do something special which costs a little more, they would choose a Cordovan leather. It's got a very beautiful shine, as it is like a suede leather, even though it doesn't look like suede because it's flat and shiny. But the structure is how you turn it, the light reflects differently, so you have a very nice reflecting game on the color. That makes it so beautiful.
Can you tell us about the technical process then of making?
Well, the test pair, it's fairly quickly done. It's just stuck on sole and you've got a cork heel. But then the definite wear, it's all sculpted on the lasts. So we prepare the insole. That's the sole touching the foot. You have to cut out a kind of wall through which you can later sew on the welt and connect like this the upper with the insole. I have to decide the position of the foot. If I give some more width on the outside to sustain the foot, to bring it into a better position, or other things, or if I want to reinforce the arch, the length arch. And already this is very personal. And then I would make the patterns. We cut materials, sew it together on quite old machines, but perfectly working machines. They're still working with pedaling. And then I would pull the upper. So I have the upper, which is made with the outer leather and the lining leather, and then we prepare the reinforcements. So the back of the shoe and the front of the shoe, the toe, they are always very stiff. So we prepare these, we cut them out from the sole leather and we make them thinner. We skive them with a clicking knife, or with a skiving knife actually. And all these materials now are worked in a wet condition. Humid. So the leather normally stiff, it gets soft when it's humid. And then I would pull it over with the lasting pincers. And as I said before, I have to pull to the maximum extension. It must not move anymore. I fix it with nails, and I would replace the nails with the seam of the welt. The welt is a thin, long piece of leather, always talking about the sole leather, that makes a frame around the shoe. I had the little wall already made, the insole, the lining, the reinforcement, the upper, and the welt. So that's the shoe as it will stay for a very long time that the person wants to wear it. The sole can be replaced as it needs to be. So once the customer has a hole in the sole, the shoe comes back to me. I will put the last inside the shoe again and sew the sole through the same holes again. And the shoe is getting new. Actually, it's getting more and more beautiful wearing it and having a patina. And of course, I forgot to talk about the heel. The heel is made with different layers of the sole leather still. Attaching each layer with there's a vegetable glue and little wooden tacks. So we'd make the hole first and place then the wooden tack inside. And also here it's still sculpting really, especially making a lady's heel. A lady's heel is not just a straight heel, but you have nice curves and everything. So that's about the process. In the end, we have to take off the last and give space to the foot. And once the foot gets into it, it goes, creates a kind of vacuum. Yeah, really. It's true. The customers are always surprised, saying when it happens.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That must be a very satisfying moment.
Honestly.
Fabulous.
That means you've done it perfectly.
Yeah, definitely.
And what sort of time does it take? I'm sure they vary, but
Yeah.
what sort of time length for a pair?
I give an average amount of time of about 80 hours, about 2 weeks of time.
And do you make your own shoes?
I do. That was a kind of commitment since I have my own workshop. So since 20 years, I have to wear my own shoes.
And your family?
Yeah, my husband, he has. I have shoes made by me. I was trying to make shoes for my little boy, and at a certain time it didn't work anymore. So I think children
very fast, don't they?
Yeah. Also, they have other needs really. So I did a nice pair of kind of sandals for him, and he was like making a short sprint of a couple of meters and stopping, and it didn't work. He said, "No, Mama, this doesn't work." They're not sporty enough. I think they need a very soft and rubber sole rather than a leather construction, I think. That's fair enough. One day he would want a pair of shoes, maybe, being bigger.
So I wanted to just come back to the idea of Venice.
Yeah.
How did you end up here, and what does it mean that you're here? What's the significance of you being in Venice with your profession?
I was working for a shoemaker, and then I went away and came back because I wanted to make an exhibition in his workshop. I had another project in Japan realized, and that was the moment that he wanted to get rid of his workshop. He asked me, "Do you want to take over? There is another person interested. Why don't you do it together?" And I said, "Well, I think about it." And actually, we found out that the other person, we would have different ideas, and it wouldn't work. But in this time, I was helping him as well to get to an end his orders, and in this time, I found my workshop. It was vacant, and I could rent it. Yeah, and I said, "Why not Venice?" So I think it was quite interesting. I never said, "Oh, one day I want to be a shoemaker in Venice." No, it happened to be because also many friends of mine, Venetians, they wanted this to happen. And I think I would have never done it on my own, just one person. It's not a singular construction, the whole thing. So everybody was kind of helping and oh yeah, they wanted it to happen. And so it did. And I didn't expect anything. And then I found myself in the workshop. I said, "Okay, let's do it here." And yeah, I think the Venetians, they need such realities. And I also need Venice. I mean, it's not a metropole like London or Paris, like where you have the customers living there. I am working with tourism. I'm working for people coming from abroad. And I think it's a very nice solution, really. Not being a metropole, the living conditions in Venice are much better than they would be in London or Paris. It's much easier to live in Venice, but still I can work with the same clientele. And especially in Venice, I mean, that's the walking city. You don't buy tires for the car, but you buy good shoes because you have to walk. And I think the city is made to measure to the humans. For me, it made the same noise, kind of.
Are there other shoemakers in Venice?
There are, yeah. We're three ladies making shoes. Each of us has their own ideas and very nice products. It's still a lot, I think. Anyway, nowadays it's a very small city, but still having three hand-making shoemakers, it's quite exceptional.
But you've obviously got a lot of heart for sharing your skills. Do you share the skills in other ways?
All the time, really. I always have young people working with me, trainees, staying more or less. Recently, I have exchanges from Erasmus, people coming from Slovenia, Austria, France as well. So I've always had people working with me, except of the pandemic year one, I didn't have anybody. And then I'm teaching, different teaching experiences in various universities. Latest, it was in Venice University. They have the fashion department, shoe and accessories workshop, and I think it's great.
I'm curious because shoes have become such potent symbols recently with refugees and sometimes protests.
I quite liked. I went to Rwanda once. I had a workshop there as well, teaching to European students in Rwanda, but with a Rwandan craftsman. And I liked it because these African countries, they are flooded with Chinese industrial products. So the common shoes there would be the plastic sandals. But the beauty there is that they recycle the plastics. They would repair them. And they make the most beautiful things with them. I mean, actually, for our terms, these products are not repairable. You use them, to throw them away. But they would care for them as we do here for a made-to-measure shoe, almost. They really get the best out of it and for the longest possible.
Have you made a pair of shoes for someone and recognized how important to them it was?
Yes, of course. It happened several times to me. I'm also working for the Salzburg Festival, and they make made-to-measure dresses, hats, wigs, and shoes. So I'm going there every year in the month of July. And we make made-to-measure shoes for the solo singers mainly, but also for exceptional productions, I mean. And there I could tell that they have very particular needs. They have to feel very well in their shoes. And sometimes exactly this fundament is so important. Once I had this very small lady, I don't even remember her name, she was a great singer. She had a little difficult feet, but anyway, she was working very hard with me to get it right. And then she would plant their feet on the stage and push out this enormous voice from this little lady. And it was so important for her to have this earth link, it's not earth, but it's a stage link with the shoes. And if this wouldn't be right, she wouldn't be able to concentrate and give her best, really. And it was especially for her and also for others very important. So that's why they still offer this service of made-to-measure shoes at the Salzburg Festival. Also the sustain of the holding of the feet. There was another singer, she wanted it tighter than I expected it to make. I would have given her more freedom, but she wanted it tighter. And again, this tightness on the feet, and she was bringing out her best. I'm talking about two different people, but so it's very important for these personalities, singers, to have a particular footwear.
It's amazing just to think. Did you watch their performances?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I have to. I'm very lucky I have to. It's the general rehearsal we watch, and so all the people working for the workshop, they have to see it. I think it's very important to see.
We recorded some sounds of Venice, and we recorded the footsteps of people going over the bridges. And I noticed there was no women were wearing heels. There was no heels.
No.
I mean, heels make a nice sound, so I wanted to get some, but no heels.
Well, walking nicely in Venice with the heels. You have these stones, and you get in between, and you have the many bridges. It's not fun. So, ladies going for a cocktail meeting, they would bring their high heels in the bag and would change them just before entering. But then there is a little anecdote. So I'm living around the corner here, and my landlord, he was a baron, a noble, and we were twice invited in his home, and he was already blind. He was actually a composer of modern music, and he quite liked the idea to rent the apartment to a craftsman. He came by every now and then, and once he brought us to the door and said, yeah, you have certainly made-to-measure shoes. And he had as well. And he said, you know what the difference is? It's a sound when you click the heels one to each other, this one. And that's the difference. And he said, well, I do this well. We both clicked out. So that's the sound of the heel of the made-to-measure shoe.
So thanks to Gabriele Gmeiner for sharing her story. You can discover more on her website, gabrielegmeiner.com, or on Instagram at Gabriele Gmeiner. And thanks to you for listening. As with all episodes, you can find photographs of the work discussed on our website, materiallyspeaking.com, and on Instagram. If you're enjoying Materially Speaking, please subscribe to our newsletter on our website so we can let you know when the next episode goes live.